Hi friends, this is Sunil Chandy and this is Food for Thought again, and this is a ministry out of Christ Episcopal Church. I am the priest and rector here at Christ Church, and we are at a different place again, not just in my office, not just in the church, but we are in the church sanctuary. But you've never actually been in this situation. We're right now in the choir loft. This is on our balcony in the church sanctuary, and we're here with our choirmaster, George Kent, and we're going to talk a little bit today about this great piece of, this wonderful instrument, our organ, and with George, who knows a great deal about the history of it. George, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. Thank you.
I know that this organ was a labor of love for you, because you helped institute it or bring it into existence here at Christ Church.
Well, yes. When I came to Christ Church as organist, which was back in 1956, I believe, this gallery was not here, and the organ was not here. The organ then was up where the present chapel is and your sacristy.
Yeah. The
The organ was housed in a separate room almost, and only had openings there and where the anode stained glass is now, that was the openings. And it was, well, it had an interesting history. The organ originally was down Elm Street in a house.
It was in a house?
Yes. Where the current St. Pius church is,
Right.
there was a house owned by a rather wealthy person who had this organ installed midway between two floors. And it was a German Welty organ, a theater organ. It played from rolls. Similarly, the way a piano plays from rolls, you know, with the pedals and so forth.
Yeah.
And it was, the reason it got to Christ Church was that one of the senior wardens here, Andrew Fisher at that time, decided to give it as a memorial to his widow, his first wife, and just up and did it. And it was not a church instrument by any means. It had nothing above a 4-foot pitch on it, and I'll explain that later. And it was cantankerous, and it was old.
Wow.
And it was very difficult to get anything done. It really would not even accompany hymns too well.
Oh, really?
So James Hannon was then the rector, and we talked about the possibilities of doing something different, which was at that time rather controversial, because again, we didn't want to put a new organ back where this other one was, and we had a fair amount of people in vestry, etc., that thought, well, no, the organ's fine, you know, we don't need anything.
I know.
Finally, one of the parishioners, Harold Brown, who was the father of the priest, who's I've forgotten his first name now, but Harold had a little bit of an inkling, and he went in one day to see what was behind the wall, and he came out and stated, "This is a cider press."
Cider press, what does that mean?
You know what you press apples with to make
Yeah.
cider?
Oh, it's a cider press.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
At any rate, after a fashion, we decided that we had to do something different. And of course, the problem was, where should the organ go? It obviously wouldn't make any sense to put it in a separate room where it's not to be heard. The obvious answer was either on the front wall,
Yeah.
or on the rear wall. Well, the front wall wouldn't make much sense to the parishioners, although There are several churches where that is done, but that was quite a bit controversial. Ultimately, we decided that it should go back here and that we should build a gallery over the narthex, which is what we did. Now, my problem in those days was that I had to go to the widow of Andrew Fisher and almost ask permission to not use the memorial that he had set up. And I was young and wet behind the ears.
Well, so that's one point. How old were you at this time?
Oh, I must have been in my early 20s, I think.
So did you just graduated from URI, or?
No, I had graduated. Well, yeah, I had. When I first came, was 1956. By the time we got around to doing the organ, I'm talking about 1962.
62. Okay.
63, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So I got up enough courage to
let me ask
go
you.
and see the widow.
So Jim
and she was absolutely fine with it.
She was,
no problem.
That's beautiful.
Whatever, if it needs to be done, it should be done. So we were off and running, and we had a great deal of very positive work from the vestry and people to go out and raise money to get this project done. Well, the first thing was to build a gallery. We built the gallery, and the gallery was here for 2 years before the organ went in. The organ went in 1965.
65.
Yeah.
And this is again while Jim Annan was here.
Yes. Yeah.
Jim Annan became rector here in 1962, isn't it, or something?
No, he came.
No, he came.
He came back as rector shortly after I came here as full-time organist and choirmaster. And the vestry had not told him that he had a full-time organist and choirmaster. And he said to then the senior warden, J. Albert Pawson, who was the owner of the Bradford Dye Works, Peace Dye Works, and a British fellow, and he said to him, you didn't tell me anything about I have that full-time organist and choirmaster. And Pawson's response was, well, Father Annan, you have to have faith. And he said, that's the first time anybody ever told me I should have faith. And at any rate, but everything was positive, and we did get the gallery in. The next step was, what type of organ should we have?
Yeah.
So
up to this time, the major decision was to not have the organ situated in the place that it was before, but to have it a new space created.
Right.
And now the next decision is what type of organ.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
And with that in mind, basically, the pipe organ is a wind instrument. I mean, originally it was hand pumped. Even those huge organs in Europe, there were treadle system for men to step in and pump on these things.
I've seen those organs.
And quite often, if they had on a Saturday night some bad actors in the town, they would house them up in the church the next morning to pump the organ. No, that's documented.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we still do that? No.
Well, we talked about it actually, because if you lose electricity, there's no way to run the
organ
blower, the organ blower. And I can tell you that I at one point was playing concerts in Sweden, and 2 minutes before the concert in this one church, the power went out.
Oh my God.
Well, the Swedes have an enormous supply of candles, and they're wonderful. The church lights up, and they took care of all of that. And the organ had been built with a hand pump.
Just in case.
So one of the trombone players in the brass group that I was playing with pumped the organ for the organ pieces.
Oh,
and we got through the concert.
Uh-huh.
So it happened in spite of the power problem. At any rate, it wasn't practical ultimately to do that here.
Yeah.
But the issue here was to make whatever instrument go here not get in too much of the way of the stained glass, because in many ways this is some of the most interesting stained glass in the church.
Yes.
And it was done by Joseph Reynolds, a Boston artist. We debated very carefully about how to do this and to save the glass. But that's, in fact, the why the organ is in the shape that you see it.
Yes.
Because we tried to fan it so that the rose window came through still from down below.
Yes.
And the two lancets are visible. That was the project.
That's beautiful. I think.
Now, to get back to organs,
Yeah.
after the advent of electricity,
Yeah.
then organs were controlled by blowers that were run by electricity. And stop action was done by electricity. This is what we call a mechanical action organ or a tracker organ, which means that every note on the organ is played by means of a lever going all the way back to open the organ chest. If you listen to this. Now I'm going to just depress that key slowly, and you're going to hear that valve open slowly. Again.
Yeah.
So that you have ultimate control of the music. Or you can't do that with electric action. Electric action is either on or off. It's like a doorbell.
Okay, so either you make one sound or the other.
But there's no way to control the articulation of
So then, like, even with the control of that, you get to adjust the sound that comes out.
Yeah, this is all taking place with here. That's why I say it's a wind instrument.
Wind instrument,
as
okay.
opposed to a keyboard instrument.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
So you have a different amount of control.
So so then you have the so which brands in terms of, because when I was at St. Andrews Mount Holly, we had a Skinner organ.
Yes, that would have been electric.
And that's an electric organ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it did seem to have pipes, but I think it was ornamental.
Oh, no.
No?
It's a pipe organ.
It's a pipe organ.
But as to how the air gets to the pipe is the question, you know.
Okay.
That's the difference. Now, we knew that one of the most important builders in the 20th century was an American, Charles Fisk. And so we were very interested to see whether he would consider building an organ for us. We also got a specification for a possibility from the Schlicker Organ Company of Buffalo, New York.
Schlicker.
They were mostly electric action, but I had a colleague who was a close friend who was the sales manager, and he wanted a chance to bid, which he did.
Yeah.
And we also had a set of specifications from the Rieger Organ Company of Schwarzach, Austria. They were very interested and would have built a very incredible, complete organ in terms of the reed pipes, which I'll speak about later, but not saving the windows.
Not saving the windows.
Charles Fisk was able to come up with this design. Now, he was a very interesting guy.
Yes, I've heard about his history.
He was originally trained as a nuclear physicist and, in fact, worked on the first A-bomb.
Yeah.
He was part of the Manhattan Project. But he went out to Stanford University in California for an advanced degree in nuclear, and he was having real questions in his own mind about whether he wanted to be cooped up messing with physics and bombs, etc., the rest of his life. And he ran into one of the more important 20th century musicologists, Putnam Aldrich, and they became quite good friends. And in the friendship, Charles was having all of these issues with whether he was going to stay in nuclear physics, and Putnam told him, you know, Charlie, with your knowledge of sound and your musicianship, because he was very musical, you should think about building pipe organs. And that's how that all started. He apprenticed with a local builder in California and then came back east. He was raised in Rockport out on Cape Ann in Massachusetts, near Gloucester, and set up shop, and the C.B. Fisk Organ Company was formed.
How long ago was that? It must have been...
Well, that was...
In the 50s, late 50s?
No, it was in the 60s, actually.
In the 60s, okay.
And by the time he got to us, we signed a contract in 1963, I believe. So it was a 2-year waiting period. Before us, he had built the Mount Calvary organ in Baltimore.
Okay.
Which a group of us went to see, to just see how it worked in the church, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, he was the builder, and we put the organ in.
So then he was experienced by that time in 1963. He's done several different organs already, completed several different projects.
Yes, this is Opus 45, I think. Yeah.
Okay, this is his 45th.
Yes.
45th.
Right. Yeah,
okay,
right.
Great.
He's built quite a number of smaller organs. In fact, this was the first 3 manual, I believe. I think that's correct.
And it took him 2 years. It took them 2 years to.
Oh, at least, yeah. No, because everything is handmade.
Yeah.
You know.
Was it handmade in the U.S. or was it in?
Well, the pipes for the most part came from Europe.
From Europe.
Today, the Fisk organ makes their own pipes, everything. So the shop has expanded. He's passed on, unfortunately, but he was a powerhouse.
Yeah.
In the organ world.
I remember hearing stories how you would take him to Organist.
Oh yes, he came to choir camp.
Choir.
We had a ghost walk one time where we needed some smoke for the ghost to come through, and so we worked this out with powder, and he made a tracker mechanical action device that went about 20 feet away from where the powder was, so that I could set it off from over here. by a thing that would flip and light the match. Yeah, he was extremely skilled.
Oh my God.
Yeah, very special guy.
And humble. The fact
that
he could,
no, very, very wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And after the organ went in, we established the organ series, and over the years, over the next 20 years, I think I can safely say that every important European concert organist played here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the finest here, and including Anton Heiler, who was in Vienna. And I'll tell you a funny story. Anton Heiler had been hired by a firm a church in Providence to dedicate their new organ, which was electric. And he was bent on finding out how this instrument worked. He made the organist drive him here the afternoon of the concert there. And he played the organ, and he stood up here and he yelled down, "This is what you should have done." Not very nice, but at any rate, you know, the mechanical action thing is very important because it is ultimate control.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise you're just ringing doorbells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I for the 7 years I've been here, and I've come to the concerts where we've had guest organists come in, I always sensed that they really appreciated playing on this instrument.
Oh yeah, it's very special.
Yeah.
And people have come. I just had a young organist who just graduated from Oberlin Conservatory come here 3 weeks ago to have a go, and So I get calls quite a bit.
Yeah.
Now, what is the organ?
Okay.
You see 3 keyboards plus a pedal keyboard. Each one of these keyboards...
I'm going to move over there.
Each one of these keyboards is a separate organ unto itself. So you have, in degrees of loudness, you have the great organ, which is this keyboard, and that's the most pungent, if you will, of all of them. And then you have the swell organ. It's called swell because I can control the sound by these shutters. That's all. The swell is all enclosed in there. And that's what, so that, for example, I have...
Wow.
So that's controlled that way.
And you're using your foot also.
On the swell shades.
On the
pedal,
swell
yeah,
shades.
Right. Whereas the great, in contrast, or the rook positive, which is everything out here, play the same thing. You have 3 different levels of sound, plus you have the pedals. Now the fundamental pitch of the pipe, which means when I play this note it would sound the same pitch as a piano, means that that pipe needs to be 8 feet in length. And if I play a different stop that's only 4 feet length in pipe, it's going to sound an octave higher. Likewise, if I play 2 foot length, right, and I can even do that at the 1 foot pitch.
Wow.
And 16 feet are the big ones here, the pedals, so that they and at 8 and at 4. Now there are different families of pipes. The fundamental sound that tells you that this is a pipe organ, it's not an accordion or whatever, you know, when you hear it you say, oh, that's an organ, is what we call the principal sound. And that's this row right in front here of this spotted metal, which is a combination of zinc and tin. But
yeah.
By contrast, we have the flutes. And for example, let's just take a look at all 3 different kinds of flutes. The one on the great swell, it's a different color. This is even yet a different color. So that you can make a good variety. And that again depends on the ability of the organ tuner or the organ builder to voice the pipes, and that's a specialized art. And that was one thing that Charlie Fisk was without peers. You know, he really was way ahead of the game.
Now, was the mechanical organ something of a new concept, or was this is ancient? It's
ancient. Yeah. It goes back to this particular organ is referred to as a classical organ because of the mechanical action. That's a kind of a misuse of the word, because the organ was classical in the Baroque era, which was from 1600 to 1750. And that was the heyday of this kind of organ being built. Again, once electricity came in, things changed, and you got what we call more romantic organs that were meant to imitate the sounds of an orchestra. You know, and that's what Skinner was doing.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So that's.
So then, I mean, so the thing I'm looking at this, and you know, I've got to apologize, George, because every time I'm, you know, when I do a service, I just say play the hymn. You know? But I mean, even just now, looking at what it's complex. It's
yeah, you have to make decisions about what you're going to do. For example, on hymns.
Yeah.
You know, I may start one verse. Along the way, I might change it too, and finally end up with, you know.
And all these
so you build a hymn, and again, it depends on the text of the hymn also.
Right.
You know,
and
what the message is of the verse.
And there's all these little decisions that have to be made.
Right.
In order to get the right tone, the right.
Yeah.
You
know, I may feel one way about a hymn, somebody else may feel entirely different and do it differently, you know. So that's.
And then also there's adjustments based on when because it's a mechanical action, because of how hard you press.
Yeah, the articulations.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I will be much more careful when I say, just play a hymn, Sam. George. just play anything.
Right, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, anyway.
let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
This one over here, these
trumpets. These are that I talked about families. I mentioned the principles as being the fundamental sound of an organ, and then I mentioned flutes. You also have strings. Now on this instrument, because it's a classic organ, it only has one string, which is the flute celeste. If I play just the flute, now if I add the string, then you get a sort of a quieter, more, which I use during communion, for example, quite a bit. And it's more headed towards a romantic organ, if you will. But the reason a flute celeste sounds the way it does is that it's not tuned quite the same as the other one. Here, listen to the flute. Now let me play the flute celeste. Just a little bit sharp. Yeah. Now, when you put them together, then you get this. Hear it?
Yeah.
It beats. Now these reeds, this is the trumpet, the longest ones. And then we have in the second row at 4-foot pitch, an octave higher. And together.
Wow.
And you have reeds in the pedal. Or up an octave. Or down an octave at 16-foot pitch. Yeah, they're quite out of tune right now. The reason for that is it's summertime.
It's summertime, and we
have uneven heat here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're also going to be having this the instrument tuned, right? I think in January, or
well, it's going to be worked on. There's some. It went in 1965.
Yeah.
It's time to replace some of the leathers that contain the air, so the air can't leak, and the leather that you use for a pipe organ, guess which kind is the best leather to use for a pipe organ?
I would think the only leather I know of is cowhide, I guess, no?
Kangaroo hide.
Kangaroo.
Kangaroo hide is the best for an organ.
Oh, why is that? Is it?
It's more pliable and it has a tendency to last longer.
Wow.
So the Australians got to be careful.
So we've got some material from down under.
Yeah.
Then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we've got to replace some of those things, and yes, hopefully in the first week of January we'll get this put back in workable. I mean, it's fine right now, but if I really want to be fussy, no, it needs work.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll get to it. Yeah. And that's about it. We also have one other kind of stop on the organ, which is called a mixture. That's when you play more than one pipe at a time. For example, now, that's the same note, but it's sounding. Did you hear it break back and pick up a low note as I went up? And that's what gives you the real pizzazz. And the mixtures are either 2 or 3 ranks together at the same time, or 4 or 5 ranks together at the same time. They're all different. This is the mixture on the swell. And you see that picks up in the middle, it picks up something quite low, which gives it a different flair. Or the mixture on here. But it's more than one pipe at a time. So we have mixtures and mutations, which are pipes that start at other than the octave. For example,
do you make these decisions for the mixtures while you're playing, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or in advance. I hear you practicing. I love hearing you practice down. But do you make it? Is it something depending on, or do you know in advance?
Depending on the music.
Depending on the music. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, but a mutation. For example, we have what's called a Sesqui Altera. That means it's got the 12th and the 17th playing at the same time. So if I take, excuse me, I don't want that. What is it doing? Oh, and one of the problems. Now, if I go up 12 notes, and if I go up 12 notes plus the 17th, I can do that. That's called a mutation, and that's a whole nother ball game. So it's complex.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, just so the shades of sound that comes out.
Yeah, a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Well, that's about it.
George, we should come up here more often. I just to hear it. I mean, I think
a little warm up here, you know.
Yeah. Hopefully, with the air conditioning, that'll change it too.
We'll see how that goes too.
Well, George, thank you for spending some time with us, and for you folks. This is one of the great attractions of being here at Christ Episcopal Church. It's our music that has inspired and helped people through the very difficult and challenging times in their life and the joyful times. And all of the music, and I know, because I know George's character always gives honor to God and glorifies God and helps people to connect to God through music. And George, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your ministry among us, and I'm grateful that you're instrumental in bringing this great Fisk organ into Christ Church, and being able to touch the lives of so many people.
Yeah, it was a big project, but it was very well worthwhile.
Right.
So,
And I'm sure, I know that the things seem to work really well and connect really well, but I also I know whenever we're making a change like this, it's controversial, and it often involves a great deal of devotion and faith and prayer, and of calming of people who might be anxious.
we had a lot of people got on the bandwagon and made a go of it. So
Yeah,
it was very good.
it's beautiful.
Right.
Folks, thank you again for joining us, and it's our time to end right now. And so what we do is we end with this prayer. This is a prayer that we have started since the beginning of the COVID crisis. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Let us pray. Jesus Christ, you traveled to towns and villages, curing every disease and illness. At your command, the sick were made well. Come to our aid now in the midst of the global spread of the coronavirus. Heal those who are sick with the virus. May they regain their strength and health through quality medical care. Heal us from our fear, which prevents nations from working together and neighbors from helping one another. Be present with those in authority who are making hard decisions. Support the medical professionals, emergency responders, counselors, and our caregivers. We ask this all in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, go in peace to love and serve God. Spread the light of Christ to the world around you, the light of hope, joy, music. The world needs it right now.
Thanks for watching. Did you know that you can join Christ Church from anywhere in the world? If you're feeling connected to what we're doing, email us today at communicate@christchurchwesterly.org.